Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be using this gouache for the first time ever. I have never used this material before and I cannot wait to try it out, but first I have to unbox it, and I unboxed it upside down. Not very satisfying, so let's give that a flip over, and I have to unpackage all of these before I can start painting. So let's start unpackaging and subscribe. I was so excited to jump right in and paint something with this gouache, and then I realized I have to unpackage all of them, and they were all super difficult to unpackage. It was like trying to open a Chick-fil-A packet, a little bit stressful, a little bit messy, but so worth it in the end. And it was also really satisfying. Once I got half of them unpackaged, then I went ahead and did the rest off camera, and then it was time to pop them all back in whatever order I wanted, and I opted for this semi-rainbow color order, which was really satisfying to put them all back into the right place. And once I did that, I could finally get started on mixing all of them, but they look so satisfying and delicious and pretty. Here are the paintbrushes that the set came with. I found this on Amazon, and I will link it down below in the description, so if you want to check it out too, you can. And now it's time to open up this new notebook that I got specifically for gouache painting. And all of these paints need some mixing, as you can see, quite frightening. So I'm going ahead in with individual toothpicks and just giving each color a little mix. This is the before and this is the after. You can tell that it really needs a little mixing to get all of the pigments the way they should be, but it was really satisfying and it made the paints look so much more smooth and beautiful. And then as I was mixing them, I was also color swatching on my new paper, one to test the paper and two to test the pigment. And this was really satisfying, and it's always helpful to swatch new art supplies. That way you know what colors are going to look like on your paper. This set in particular came with 24 different colors, which I all put on my paper. And once I was done mixing and swatching all of my colors, then I wanted to decorate the front cover a little bit and take one more look at these pretty gouache paints, which are now all mixed. And here are all of the swatches, which turn out super beautiful. But like I said, I want to decorate this first cover and just mark out that these are the swatches, and then also mark out when I started this journal. It's my plan to be consistent with these and try to get better at gouache and just paint more in general. Painting is one of my favorite things to do in terms of art, and I just love it so much, so I want to do it more often, and I'm hoping that this helps me to do it and get better at it. So I wrote when I started, and now it's time to actually start. I wanted my paper to have a little border around it, so I decided to go ahead and tape it off. And then after that, I used just a very faint blue. I watered it down a lot to kind of create an outline for my drawing, which I knew I wanted to do a fall landscape. I have been in such a fall mood. It's October, it's prime fall season, and so I really wanted to capture that in a fall landscape scene with a winding road and then leaves all around the road. So I started by just mapping out the road in the scene, and then after that I went in with this black paint and kind of watered it down to make it lighter in certain areas and made it thicker to keep it darker in certain areas. And I was trying to really mess around and learn the consistency of gouache paints, because when I was looking into my limited research about these paints, because I've never used them before, I found out that you can use them straight out of the can. You can water them down almost to be like watercolors, but you kind of want to aim for a milk consistency. Not my words, that's just what I read. So I was really trying to learn how to use these paints, but for now I just figured I would start out with a really loose base with a lot of water mixed in with the paints. That way I could just map out where everything went and just start with getting color onto the paper. I do think it's funny though that my research said to make it a milk consistency, because like, what kind of milk are we talking about? Like almond milk, 2%, 1%? It's just really vague, and you never really know what that actually means in terms of paint. Like, I like the idea, but I'm not really sure how helpful it is. And it was also kind of weird to learn that it could be used in so many different ways, which makes sense, and it seems very much like acrylic paint to me, but just a little more opaque and a little bit higher quality in terms of coverage. But a lot of acrylic paints can do that too. So I'm not really sure what the main difference is between acrylic paint and gouache paint, other than the gouache paint came in this really cute, satisfying pink container. But anyway, I decided to try and treat these pretty much like acrylic paint, except I loved that you could layer things so much easier, which from my understanding is the main advantage of using gouache. Upon another 5-second Google search, I have also found out that acrylic is a little more durable and it's easier to put on other things other than paper, whereas gouache has a matte finish, but it's easier to kind of get messed up. And I also learned that gouache is completely malleable, kind of like watercolors, until it's dry, whereas acrylic paint dries really quick, but it's also blendable when it's wet. I don't know. There's a difference, but I'm not really sure how big the difference is, but I tried to treat it pretty much the same. And so I just went in with kind of techniques that I normally would. The biggest difference, like I said, I noticed was in the coverage, where it really came into the end, where I could really just add in details and make everything pop and come to life, and it would just cover over everything that I did. That's the main difference that I noticed. But other than that, I pretty much just treated them like acrylic paint and tried to figure out what consistency worked best for me. See, with new things like this, it's really fun because when you don't know the rules, there really are no rules. Like, there were no limitations to how I should use the gouache because I don't know how to use it. This is the first time I've ever used it, so I don't know what works or what's allowed or not allowed in terms of how to use it. So I was just doing whatever I felt like would work, and that's always so much fun when experimenting with a new art supplies. There are no restrictions or limitations. You just get to be creative and try and see what works. In terms of the painting, I'm still at the stage where I'm just trying to cover paper. It's so much easier to paint when you don't have distractions of the white spaces, which sounds really weird, but sometimes the best thing you can do when you start a painting is just to color the whole thing one color and kind of do a base painting. That way your paint doesn't show through at the end, but also you just don't have the white intimidating space of paper. So my first step was just to cover everything and then kind of get a base of colors out where I thought the shades needed to go. And then after that, I could go in with the details, which is what I'm starting to work on now. I took this really tiny brush to kind of create individual leaves, and I wanted this to be so bright and vibrant, which I was trying to figure out how to do. I had to wait and let layers dry because, like I said before, gouache is really malleable until it's dry, and then you can layer new paint on top without affecting the underneath layers. But if you do it too soon and you don't wait for the layers to dry, it can get a little bit muddy. So I was struggling with that a little bit, but I just tried to be extra patient and work on parts that I knew were dry, and then I would go back to the other parts to add more layers and texture later. This painting was very intimidating for a lot of reasons. One, it's been a while since I've painted anything. Two, I've never used gouache before. Three, I rarely paint backgrounds or landscapes really, so this was also a little bit intimidating, especially trees and foliage. It's extremely hard. So there was a lot of things that were challenging for me this time around, but I just really wanted to try, and I knew that I would get better. So I was trying to not put pressure on myself about this, but I don't know about you guys. Sometimes I flip through social media and I will see the most beautiful gouache paintings everywhere, and they're so pretty, and I just wanted to create something like that. So I was putting a lot of pressure and expectation on myself when I've literally never used this art supplies before. So I tried to not take it so serious and just kind of start putting colors everywhere and splotches, and then give myself the chance to come back and correct everything later, and also just give myself the grace that it might not be the best painting I've ever done, and that's okay because I'm learning something and I'm having fun while I'm doing it. So that was my goals for this, and also just to reminisce about fall a little bit. It is such a beautiful season and it's going by so fast. I don't know about for you guys, but for me it just felt like this year, especially the tail end, is just breezing by. So I'm really trying to embrace it and do fun things to remember it and reflect on it a little bit more. So this was really fun, and I loved getting to try new things with this art piece. It was definitely challenging. Something else that was fun and challenging about this was the colors definitely changed a lot from when they were wet to when they were dry, and even the camera was picking up the gloss, so it looked white when I would lay paint down because of the reflections of my lights, but then as it dried you could see the colors come through, so it made editing this video kind of challenging. As you can see here, it looks white when I'm putting it down, and then it dries and you can tell that the color is red. So it was a really fun thing to see and watch it kind of transform the drawing. At this point, I felt like the drawing was finally coming out of its ugly stage, especially on the right side. I was pretty pleased with that, so I wanted to get the left side to mirror the right side a little bit more in terms of detail and in style. So that's what I started working on, was just making sure that it reflected and matched the same side. But this was just a really fun and challenging drawing. It took so long to try and get it right, and that's also kind of a weird and good thing about gouache, is since it's so opaque, you can just go over any parts you don't like. So it's a really good thing, but you can also get stuck in this kind of perfectionist mindset of, oh, I can fix this really easily, so let's just go ahead and fix it. So it was hard to find out when this drawing was done. Sometimes you can overwork a piece and take it past its point of what it needs, and I was kind of worried I was doing that, so I tried to pick my moments of what I wanted to fix and what I wanted to add. So I finished off by adding in a couple of highlights everywhere, which was really satisfying since the paint is so opaque. And then after that, I decided to call it good and call it done. I felt like the sides matched enough. I still wanted to add in a couple more details, fill in the background a little bit, add in some background faraway trees, and then also add some highlights on the road to try and make it look a little more 3D and show the light source a bit better. And then after that, I was content with where the drawing was at. I still hope, obviously, in the future that I will get better and that this will come even more to life. But upon looking at it later, I'm pretty happy with it. It's not as detailed and distinguished as I hope that it would be, but for a first time at gouache painting, I'm pretty content with it. And I think it would be really cool to finish off the book with trying to do this same piece again to see how far I've progressed and learned this new supplies. But now it's time for the final reveal, so I'm going ahead and taking off the paint tape, which was very satisfying and helped a lot to bring the image to life even more without that weird blue border, and it looks pretty good. For a first try, I am very, very happy with it. I think it definitely captures the colors of fall, which I'm very happy with the pigment in this kit, and especially from far away, it looks really good. So I'm pretty happy with it. Even up close, I'm happy with it. And I'm just very excited to be trying out a new art supplies and to get into painting even more. My question for you is, what is your favorite art supplies? Do you prefer painting, drawing? Do you just like coloring? Let me know in the comments because I would love to know. Let me know what you think about this and what should I draw next. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.